Hello, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, show number 455. And greetings from the Netherlands. Great to be back, and a nice neutral background for right now. I wanted to spare our friends in the lobby of our place that we're staying any of my boisterous conversations. So I picked the quiet section of our apartment that we're staying at. So pardon the neutrality of it all. All said and done, thank you so much for joining us. If you're joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube, Twitter, X, still will never get quite used to that change. Thank you for joining us as well. We will recast this show, ironically, again, 11:30 a.m. Wednesday, London time for EU, where I'm at currently, and our Middle East friends, and also 11:30 a.m. Wednesday morning, Sydney, Australian time for our APAC friends. If you're watching us, of course, on our TV channel, the Hospitality Channel, thank you so much for joining us on that as well. You can find that on any Apple TV, Google TV, Amazon TV, Fire Sticks, and things like that. And Roku, Samsung, LG, all smart TVs have the ability to get access to our TV channel. The live show is always on the free side of the Pay Gateway. Pay Gateway gives us more content past that. And of course, all my friends from the Hospitality Marketing Club, thank you for always watching us. And I'm sure I'll hear about it in our live weekly conversations as to how well I did on the topic that we came up in conversation with. To that end, our topic today, it's bred as always each week from things that are in real world for me, working with what I do with my clients and or in discussions from our Hospitality Marketing Club. Again, if you want to join that, if you're a hospitality marketing professional, go to hospitalitymarketing.club, put in your email, I send you a quiz, you pass the quiz, which shows proficiency in that you are doing marketing. Then you get to join a peer group that we get to discuss and keep active, a chance to kind of collaborate over things. Anyway, that to be later. Our topic today. Our topic comes from the fact that we are going through a point now where we have resources that are internal, third-party resources. That's nothing new, either of those. But we're beginning to try to figure out, or companies are trying to figure out how to integrate what's happening technology-wise in our world and how better to do things. And what we're finding is that even though people are skilled at what they do, they don't always know a better way of doing it other than by rote, meaning progression. Step one goes to step two, step three to step four. So my topic, and it's going to sound vague at the beginning, it makes sense at the end. Big things have small beginnings. Why a roadmap can save your company's culture. Now, if you're not familiar with the phrase "big things have small beginnings," it was actually out of originally an older movie, Lawrence of Arabia. And then, for if you're younger, you'll be more in relationship to from the movie Prometheus, when David the android was referring as an homage to the earlier movie Lawrence of Arabia by making that same statement. Different movies, same statement though. It may sound like a Captain Obvious statement of, yes, of course, all big things do come from small beginnings. But in actuality, we see oftentimes a lot of failure comes from the fact that people don't actually pay attention to the idea to start small and progressively build upon the success of the small start to larger and larger impact. I'll say that in a moment after I have some coffee. As large corporations go, and I have clients that are large, a lot of times, simply because you can doesn't mean you should. A lot of large companies want to fix everything all at once, or they find that they feel like they found a fix. And from that, they want to implement it everywhere all at once. The phrase or colloquialism is boiling the ocean. Just because you want to do it all and get it all done, get it all fixed and implement it, and you're large enough and you're big enough and you think that you have the infrastructure capable enough. And so you're saying, here's a new policy change. We want everybody to do this. From now on, everybody stops doing it in this way and starts doing it this way. And it oftentimes, 99.9999-ish% of the time, very few times does it actually succeed, it fails. And so what we're talking about here is creating a small beginning and letting it grow in a way that begins to influence and spread, much like a virus in that way, not in a negative way, but in a sense, it starts from here and it grows to a larger and it begins to get connected to so much more. Well, how does that have to do with roadmaps and so forth? So let me backtrack a little bit as to what's inspirational about this conversation. We are hiring talented people coming out of college, coming out of skill sets. They know how to make paid ad campaigns. They know how to make social campaigns. They know how to do tracking configurations and so forth. But what they don't know how to do is to translate their working skills into cognitive thinking as it relates to their engagement with their projects, whether it's client-driven projects, they're doing it for somebody else, or they are responsible for doing it for the company that they are a part of. They lose connection between their functional skills and their step-by-step methodology and the purpose of why they're doing it. I mean, if you ask, and I do this and do my eye rolling every time I do this when I speak at conferences and so forth, and I ask people, what is your biggest KPI, key performance indicator? There is always somebody, if not anybody and everybody, that raises their hand, revenue, and they try to make a joke out of it because that's, of course, the only thing that matters. Oh, you've heard me on the live show here many times talk about if you filter everything through ROI, you are diminishing your capabilities because not everything succeeds in that first filter to getting to the second stage of consideration. And so I defy that fact that it's not just revenue and people doing their job. They're not making more revenue themselves by what they're doing. They're doing what's being asked of them by title, by position, by role, by responsibilities given to them. They begin to pattern it. We're creatures of habit and 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 doing things in a regular way. We also get beaten down if we begin to venture away from what we are being responsible to do for because of the politics of sandboxing and companies. This is my department, that's your department. This is what I do, that's what you do. And that siloing and separation we're constantly struggles with in trying to blur that line. Don't make those distinctions. We collectively do things together. We collectively succeed. We don't individually get to succeed when we're only one piece to the puzzle. That whole process begins to become dysfunctional. What you end up getting is people that are very much about maintaining the integrity of what they're responsible for so as to not be in jeopardy of their job or their job security or their ambitions within their work environments and so forth, or as a third party service jeopardizing the client relationship by not succeeding. And as you become more and more intimately familiar with how things are understood by the people that you're talking to, as you understand more about what limitations they have, you need to realize how you can circumnavigate, shortcut, not follow through on some things because it's never looked at, on and on and on. You become a victim of the processes rather than the purpose of what the processes were for. So, how does this all relate to my conversation of having a roadmap? What's a roadmap? Well, in the small to the big is you have an abundance of communication. Oftentimes when we are talking to clients and the large clients, small clients, and it's not necessarily a big client problem. It's an everybody client, everybody problem. Is things get lost in translation and things get lost in the filter of how does it affect the person you're talking to. We are inundated with communication channels. We complain. Actually, some countries are limited and created legalities. France, over here, for instance, if you receive emails after your designated business hours or your boss is asking you to work after the time that you're required to work, there's an actual legal rule that they can get in trouble for doing that. We're constantly flooded with email follow-ups, email strings. You've heard me complain about the fact that sometimes emails live far longer than the original subject content, but because people are lazy and they want to reply back to the collective that's associated with that email, they literally change the subject, change the context, change the communication, but are lazy and just send it on the same email string. And it gets this 50, 60 per engagement email string on something that's not even related to its original purpose. So email is a problem. We're constantly inundated with email. So, wow, we have CRM systems. We have things like Slack. We have Teams. We can do things on platforms and so forth. Yes, we can, to the point of it being an invasion and a distraction. If you don't answer your Slack fast enough, if Slack turns into a scapegoat, well, I put it on Slack. You should know about that. We're inundated with communication capabilities, but they're all related to tasks, problems, and projects. We're not investing in why we're doing things. We're investing in doing what's in front of us as a task or solving a problem. And we're inundated with it's not a communication issue. A lot of times I get asked about helping and improving, teaching the voodoo that we do kind of thing to organizations. Like, how can you cut through all of this clutter that we seem to be stagnant in and come and see the problem and fix it? A lot of times, the problem I see, they already have seen. They just don't know how to solve it, or they're too blinded by the problems, the logistics that they've created to make the problem unfixable. And I don't know if you've heard of Hammurabi's Knot, where Just rather than untie the knot, they cleaved it in half with a sharp sword. The idea of this, it's actually an old parable we talked about in the show before, where Alexander the Great, there was a thing that if whoever was to conquer this city, they had to untie this crazy knot of the main gate, and Alexander just came up with a sharp sword and cut it in half and conquered the city. Anyways, getting to the core of it, a lot of times companies are aware of what the problem is; they just don't know how to fix it. The other is that they get caught up in their own processes as to how to facilitate that. They don't know how to fix it. They throw more things at it. They want us to train people where it's about uh, teaching them how to do better paid campaigns or teaching them how to do better social media configurations or be more creative with what they're doing. That is a byproduct. Improvement of your skill set is a byproduct of what real training is about. I've seen companies that are bringing people to train their team to do better at what they already do. And sure, it can improve performances, but they end up falling back to the same habits they were running before. They may use the improved performances to simply cut time and or cut workload, but they don't make an actual growth of production from it. They just get more efficient of doing what they do and spend less time. So you need to create another channel of communication. I know I said we already have too many channels of communication. The communication that's all built around these emails and Slack and teamwork and meetings. Oh my God, meetings all the time. Is the fact that it is only about tasks, problems, and projects. So every communication is about either addressing a function, fixing a problem, or a project in its scope. There is no time being spent on active engagement as to why are we doing these things? What is the real goal? Meaning, what are we doing this for? And please don't say revenue again. And what are the KPIs that we're measuring? Sometimes it's a matter about audience expansions, better service engagements. Revenue is always a goal. Let's default everything we say about what we do for businesses is, of course, we want to make more money at it. It's like saying, I'm rich, doesn't mean I don't want to be richer, but I know when I'm rich enough. That sequence of conversation is how businesses go. You need to look at the idea, of course, we want to make more money, but at what expense to do that? And you need to be able to allow your team to go beyond their skills. A lot of times, and it's very insulting in lots of ways, that I've seen companies that want to be coming and say, I want you to teach these people paid advertising. Wait a minute. Their title is literally director of paid media. Why do you think they need to be trained on? Well, they're not doing a good job or they're not getting as much done as we want, whatever the excuse of it is. So you go in and the person across the table from you is immediately behind a wall of why you have to justify to me why you're teaching me something that I already know. And it takes a long time. It's a lot of chipping at that wall before they begin to break down and realize that everybody has something to learn from each other. What they know, I don't necessarily know. I may know some things better than them, but they may know certain things better than I do, especially in the context of the job that they do. They're first person intimate with their job. I'm third person relative to theirs. I'm learning what it is that their processes are. I'm learning what their responsibilities are. So it takes time. So rather than approach teaching somebody more skills, it's more about expanding what they're defaulting and saying, all right, you earned the job, you have the title. Okay. If you feel like they're not performing at the level that they've been hired for, that's a remedial training. That is not an expansion of productivity training. That's a remedial training. We need to make sure that we didn't make a mistake putting you in the role. We need to affirm that you are qualified to be in the role. That's remedial training. That's a different conversation. What I'm talking about is expansion of production, being relevant to what you're doing, and that contribution as a part of a team. That doesn't come from Slack, okay? And it doesn't come from emails and it doesn't come from meetings. It comes from bonding of being a part of something. And a lot of times, even if a company, and they say, well, we send surveys out all the time. We ask them, what can we do to be better? What can we do to be better? Why would anybody answer that question truthfully? First off, any questions like that, if you're truly genuinely sending that out to people, you have to guarantee an anonymity because people will be more truthful about what they think asking those questions if they don't feel there's a potential repercussion that would come out. And even then, they're skeptical that you don't somehow have a figured out a way of who answered what question. So really, that doesn't work. That hits the same defensive self-preservation wall that you do on training. What you need to do is open a channel in which they can participate. Now, the first pushback when I say that is that companies will go over and say, well, they don't want to participate. They've walled up. They don't want to share these things. We've asked them, we've told them, we've given them incentives. The only thing that people understand is that we give them reward for contributing something, and then they contribute something because they get a reward for it, not because they actually are trying to be helpful. We've had those conversations. We're not talking about just saying, okay, all this is open, please do it for free for us. No, what we're giving them is an investment of participation. This is where that big things have small beginnings comes into play. This is where it's about making their world better. The one thing I didn't say happens out of all of this communication that we're inundating our teams with, the emails, the Slacks, the project management platforms, and all that stuff, is that there's a whole nother reason that those things exist: gossip. If it isn't about a task, if it isn't about a project, if it isn't about a problem, it's about politics. And not saying general, I'm talking about company politics. Who's doing what, where what, this is that, I heard this, what do you think, whatever. For those people that are in that kind of level of dialogue with each other, usually it's in engagement level, then it's departmental level, then it's whatever. To a certain degree, out of office, engagement has dampened that, which also means that it also has created a pent up angst with people. What most companies didn't realize is that when you separated people where they didn't get to blow off steam, as it were, they began to build self-inflicted resentment because they felt there were so many things that weren't getting resolved, or reasons why they were upset that became self-fulfillingly justified because they didn't have a chance to talk to other people and vet a little bit of the things that were like, what do you think about that? Whatever. So getting everyone back to work in the offices again actually kind of abated some of that, but it also reconstituted the gossip feed, the coconut hotline kind of thing, where that more came into a problem of interdepartmental, interpersonal politics associated with personal gossip, basically. I'm not talking about the negatives of all communication. I'm talking about a positive aspect of this. SaaS companies, software as a service companies, have utilized roadmaps, which is a platform of engagement, to qualify sincere interest in growth, investment into their efforts, that they're just not a fly by night, show durability as to their plan, show vision as to what they're trying to do, and to provide future value to current purchases so that people become more and more loyal to what they've purchased, and also intuitively share it with others that in turn buy it because of these people's loyalty to their SaaS program. The roadmap is a way of communicating, this is our plan. This is what we're working on now. This is what we're going to be working on next. This is what we're going to be thinking about doing. Okay, that's the roadmap aspect of this. Now, it has the value of transparency for what's being shared. This is what our plans are. This is what we're thinking about doing. This provides an openness of some sort of direction. Why are we on the ship? Why is the ship going this direction? A lot of companies, a lot of people in their roles, is in their departments and in their titles, have long since lost the connection, if ever even having had the connection of what their company's vision is. Oh, they have a mission statement for the company. That's, yeah, okay, that, and then you can bring it to the restroom with you. It's not read, it's not believed, it's a bunch of buzzword hype. It's made by people that don't even do the work. And nobody really looks at it, making a brighter future, or whatever it is. Really, what is that? How does that translate into the reality of not only my world, but the world that we're trying to produce for our clients or services that we're offering? It's garbage. It's not that you shouldn't have some purpose-driven stuff. It's just that's not the motivation that we're talking about. So you have to have a place for people to understand beyond what they're doing. When I ran hotels, we used to have NETMA meetings. Nobody ever tells me anything. There were meetings that were every morning, and a representative of every department had to show up. And at that time, we reviewed what was going on that day. How many arrivals, departures, transitions and banquets, issues of repairs, maintenances. Every department had their chance to speak up as to what they were engaged with. It wasn't the department head had to be there, but a representative of the department. As a matter of fact, it turned out more beneficial that a representative non-supervisor went to these gatherings every morning, because you got a little bit more authenticity to the discussion. Plus, also, it empowered them to go back to their departments and share what was shared with them at the meeting. It made them feel participatory in the process of the culture of what's going on at the hotel that day. It wasn't that their boss was only telling them what they were being fed. It wasn't that they didn't know what was going on. They were aware and they were actively participating in the awareness. That same mentality is related to a roadmap in the sense that you're sharing what's going on, you're sharing your plans. The real value of the roadmap kicks into the expansion of that thought, not just in announcing what you're doing, okay, as also soliciting feedback as to what you think about what we're doing. The roadmap as a platform is the ability for it to give people, your team, feedback. I think this is a great idea. I don't see the purpose of this idea. Have you thought about this, adding it to the idea? If you did this, then this is going to create this problem with the idea, or this is going to be benefiting this idea. That active ability to comment or contribute to the roadmap is critical in the value of the roadmap. What's more critical than just the roadmap of sharing what it is you're doing, sharing what it is you are planning on doing, sharing what is in progress of being doing. Now, remember, this is not a project management platform. Project management platforms are about engagements of resources, time consumptions, conditional relationships between functions that need to be completed before next functions are completed, timelines associated with the entire project scope, ins and outs, and risks and milestones. That's an entirely different aspect than a roadmap. A roadmap is an aspirational transparency of communication of what we're planning on, what we're currently doing, what we're planning on doing, what we're thinking about doing. Feedback from your team, okay, it's an open door. You're not saying you must contribute to our roadmap, you must give a comment to it. No, what you're doing is an open door of saying we're willing to listen to what you have to say. That in itself is not enough, honestly and truthfully. If you already have a culture of isolation, siloed activities, minimalist production, checkbox progression of services, you're not going to just throw out a roadmap there and it solves the world. You have to feed and nurture the idea. This comes from the idea of solicitation of wish list ideas. What do you think we need to do? Based on what we're planning on doing, first off, do you think that's the right priorities, or do you think there's something more important? Post your idea. If you feel that there's something we should change about what we're thinking about doing and the reasons why, post your comments. That engagement process takes time to foster. It's there. It's, for the most part, when you first start a roadmap program, it's out, it's there. And you don't use it as a stick. Well, if you looked at the roadmap, you would have known we're doing this. Or if you looked at the roadmap, you could have contributed a comment or something. You don't use it as a weapon. You use it as a portal of discussion and means an open door communication of capabilities of what you're doing and what you would hope people would solicit with. What do you do with this? Why is this small little thing, small beginning, create a big impact to it? Because this isn't the only thing that you do. With roadmaps, it's a beginning point. It's a nascent point of expanding the infusion of a open communication culture. It's funny, last year, we told our clients, my team, that we were having play dates over Christmas. We found that last year, and I think I made a comment on one of the live shows, that each year ends differently depending upon the circumstances of the economy and so forth, and client base at the time and so forth. And sometimes end of the years for us are just crazy busy, can't get enough done before the holidays and so forth. And other years, like last year, was more, we had gap points where, like, there's not a lot that we need to worry about, but there's not a lot of correspondence. That people in our client relationships are on the cycle of vacations. There's no critical mass things going on. We have this flexible amounts of time. So we're going to have play dates. And the play dates were literally us getting together, not to solve a problem, not to work on a project, not to gossip, not to work on a task. It was to talk about things, and of course there were business and work things related, geeky, technical things about platforms we saw, or what about this, or I had this problem, and so forth. To be honest with you, our play dates over the years have literally been the creation of our hospitality marketing club. The ability and need to have peers that you go talk to, that you don't have to make a huge preface to your dialogue. You can talk and ask questions and share thoughts with the baseline knowledge of whom you're talking to, understands the references that you're using. So we have play dates. Our clients were absolutely envious of that. They wanted to join our play dates. It sounded funny. We're like, oh. So we did. We had some play dates with our clients where we're just like, there's no project. We're not, and this isn't billing or nothing. This was just, hey, it's a chance for us to talk about whatever we want to talk about. And of course, it related to technology or provided services, or what do you think about this? Or do you think AI is going to do that? Or do you know that VR can do this? Or every little tangent, which with no conclusive thing that it solved a problem, was working on a project, was talking about some irrelevancy or issue. It was about just figuring out and listening to other people that you respect for what they're knowledgeable about or disagree with them. A lot of the show, as we do it when we have guest hosts like Ed and Stuart and Tim Peter and so forth, is very much in the same context. We share what we think in a discussion to either justify that we can prove what we believe is more accurate than what the other person is disagreeing with us on, or to succumb to the fact that they have better points and that we were on the misled path and that they understood it better than we did and changed our perspective. That opportunity to dialogue, that play date stuff, is really the core to the idea of what the roadmap can begin to solicit. It can begin to give you a dialogue, again, that is not project problems and tasks and gossip, as it is about constructive. I'm working in this department. I would love to see that we'd have that solution presented to us. I work on these things every day. It'd be great if we had that ability to do X, Y, Z. That kind of dialogue creates an engagement. It's often talked about the fact that, and even in the discussion of this show and what we're doing for training for one of our clients and so forth, is that most people are, ask for something, get a reward, operant conditioning. Nobody does it for free. Nobody's going to be interested in something that doesn't personally benefit them. And then a lot of people don't respond as well to incentives anymore because they're dulled by the value proposition associated with them. We've had those discussions. The third one that I think is often missed is a desire to belong, to be a part of something bigger than yourself. When you're good at what you do and you do what you do well, you create efficiencies. Those efficiencies breed the fact that you have alternate time, but that alternate time has a choice that you make. Do you do more work with it, or do you do what you want to do with it? And usually it's the latter, not the prior. And what companies would love is to think that that efficiency improves productivity. It doesn't, it stagnates. People get better. So when you teach somebody, as I mentioned before, to do a process better than they've been doing it, they will. But that benefit doesn't improve the amount of work it produces. It only improves the efficiency of how they did it. And that gap point only expands to something that doesn't benefit the company. This idea of participation, of willingness to understand a greater idea of what's going on that you can contribute. And that's where the roadmap expands beyond just a roadmap. Roadmap is just one facet of it. The other aspects of it are wish lists. Others are things that can be brought up in discussions as to not related to a project or fix, but as it is a process and a program. When this begins to turn into a full flourished communication stream, then it goes off in all these different directions. So how do you begin all this? Well, one is you need to find people that you feel you can relate to the most, or that have the most to gain from understanding what you're trying to do. Account managers, departmental heads, and so forth, that can influence more than just the individual aspect of their own personal work. They have an influence on other people's work. The people that do the work that they have to coordinate, they can influence them on what they're doing. By creating a subculture, this is a small group of people that you begin to give them the vision of what you're trying to do, that you start talking in terms of what goals mean. Goals not for them individually, goals not for them departmentally. Goals as to what the company is trying to do. What are we trying to do with this client? What's the goal of this? Again, dumbing down that don't tell me revenue. What is the goal? What are we trying to improve? When we take on a new client, what is it that they brought them to us? What is it that they are hoping to get from the relationship they're wanting to have with us? What do we feel we can provide to them? What do we see that they're doing that we think we can influence in a positive way? And how do we construct that in a way that they're willing to accept it? That whole process of the goals that come out of that is not being translated in most organizations. It's all right. We have a new client. Okay, checklist number one. Click. Do I have the name of the hotel? Click. What's the number of the room counts? Click. Do I have the data access? That click. And it's an onboarding checklist. I'm not saying throw the checklist away. It's a necessary component of validation, and everything is gotten that we need, and nothing gets missed. But it's turned into the focus rather than a function. It needs to be more about, okay, we got the information. Now, what's our preliminary on this? What are we looking at? And a collective dialogue about this. So you create a subculture where you can create that nascent functionality, kind of like a SEAL Team 6 in your internal organization. These people work easier together. They're more capable of thinking of ways to solve things than they are about being stuck in the process of solving them. Meaning, hey, I'm just responsible for this. I'll do everything I can that I'm responsible for, but you all got to fix the stuff I'm not responsible for it to work. Those aren't these people. These people are the ones that say, great, this is what I got out of this so far, but I need to fix that over there. And how do I going to do that? It doesn't mean stepping on people's toes and taking away things from them. It means collaborating in a way that gets what you need from them. That nascent subculture, those people that have the ability to do that. I worked for an organization, very proud to say that I did, that we built ourselves, this team I was a part of, where we were able to do whatever it needed to get done in a collaborative way to whatever was being asked of us from the ownership. And it turned into being very successful. And the problem is that we didn't replicate it. So once the team was disseminated or over time diluted or whatever, it just faded away, and the company never redid that, at least not in a way that was as productive as when we were doing it, biased, at least I think. But the idea is that you create this subculture, this nascent start to the process. Don't try to boil the ocean. Don't try to fix everybody all at once with, hey, look what these guys are doing. So I want everybody to do that. No, you make it a desirable that if you become willing to want to do what these people are doing, that you're welcomed with the condition that you have to fit into the process. You have to believe what you're trying to do, learn how it's being done in a way that makes it that you actually become a part of it rather than just getting the title that you're associated with it. A lot of people are very eager about titles and recognition, but they don't want to do the work associated with it. This is the inversion. You love doing the work and almost decline any expansion of titles and so forth because it sometimes can get in the way of what you're very good at doing. So don't blanket everything. Don't tell everybody's got to do this and do it this way and so forth. And don't force roadmaps on people. Don't force this kind of communication on people. Everybody must do this and you must make comments and you must have this minimum, you must do this. It gets used. It first off gets built, then it slowly gets used, and then as it gets used, you create this subculture group, and that subculture shows successes, and people are envious of not being a part of it. Like, wow, those guys, that's pretty cool. I like that. They're getting recognized and they're being able to get stuff done. What is it that they're doing? Wait a minute, you mean I can be a part of that? I just have to be wanting to be a part of it. I want to be a part of that. I don't want to just do little checkbox stuff. I want to be able to think that I can have that kind of an impact and further my career, further my skill sets. That is the virility of growing from a small to a larger concept. You begin to get these people, and you're only getting the people that are truly wanting to do it. The other people are like, hey, just tell me what I need to do today. I'm in my cubicle. Give me my list. I check everything off. Can't be mad at me. You're going to pay me because I did everything you asked me to do today, and I'm going at 5. Those people are not going to be the first to adopt this idea. What will happen to those people is eventually they'll be swept up into it because it makes them feel better that things go easier, that it's not problem after problem, project after project, politics after politics. It's hey, I'm a part of something where we're getting some stuff done. I like the fact the client, when they see me, is happy, or that I hear that the client appreciated what I did. That makes me feel good. I'm a part of something that makes me feel good. That's where this small part begins. Okay, so create a subculture, start small, create some successes with it. People can begin to see it and think that they might be a part of something like that. You don't blanket the demand to everybody. Okay. Also, you have to be willing to change anything so long as it doesn't change the purpose of what you're doing it for. Your processes are constantly in flux as to what you think is best versus how it actually works best. I think there was a great picture I remember seeing on social media where it had this park and it showed where they put the concrete walkways. And then there's this dirt path across this beautiful green section, which is where people walked because they didn't go to the corner and go around. They just cut the diagonal off it. And you plan it right, but it doesn't mean it gets used that way. Okay. And that's what we're talking about. You may think this is built in a way that's best. Just ask Apple. Apple built their phone. Okay. Everybody was bashing it as a brick on a face and piece of glass on your head and so forth until the App Store came up. And then all of a sudden, the community was able to infuse what they think they would like it to do. And that made the difference between it being just another phone that wasn't even as nice as the phones that were out at the time to being what it is now, which is everything to everybody in any which way. Phones in general, smartphones, I should say. Same concept, flat glass screen, whatever. But they made it because they involved the community to making it. Same with you. Allow things to be changed. As long as it doesn't change the purpose of why you're doing this, which is to invoke a positive culture over time, to invoke a collaborative, goal centric, I know what we're trying to do this for, and I know the definitions of the KPIs associated with what we're trying to do it for. And I'm a part of that process because I want to belong to this process. That's the ultimate goal of all this. They'll self improve their technical skills. They'll look for remedial training if they feel like they need the extra help to think that they can get better at what they're doing because they want to be better at what they're doing so they can be better in what they're participating in. It's a self feeding problem. Rather than forcing it on them, they're a willingness to accept it. Okay. The old adage, you don't feed somebody because you force feed them bad food. You make good food so they're wanting to eat it. That's what you're doing. The other is you have to share. You have to share what you're doing to the point that you're no longer the one talking. All good leadership is like good parenting. You get the obstacles out of the way and you give full credit when it's available, even if it's not the credit that is theirs to have. Kids think they did it on your own, and the parents just smile knowing that they made the magic happen around them. That's what parents do. Good leadership does the same. They take the blame when things fall, and they defer all credit when credit's being given, to the point that people begin to feel that it was theirs, that they did it, that they succeeded. And yes, you want them to be that successful because they then feel success breeds success. How often do we hear this? If you do something well and you feel good for it, you want that feeling again. That's what you're creating by diminishing your voice and allowing more of the culture that you're inspiring and the engagement that it's creating begin to control the conversation, because it only accelerates and adds fuel to the fire for them. If they feel that they have, everybody knows when they have a ceiling to what they're doing. Like, we can do whatever we want to as long as it doesn't go past this point, or we can say whatever we want to until it doesn't go to this point. You keep it into the context of what you're doing it for, but if you give the empowerment to your team, kind of like the NETMA meeting I'm telling you about, where the department would send not its supervisors, but a participant of the team. It would be a housekeeper, it would be a bellman, it would be whoever. They felt empowered by coming back to their department and telling their supervisors and their team members and their peers what they were told and what they were shared with about what the hotel was doing. That empowerment, okay, that them being able to be the voice rather than somebody mitigating the voice, is a huge engagement value from things like this. That if you do these kind of roadmaps and these cultural developments with wish lists and what we think we should have and could have and what we think is better and to listen to critique, I don't think this is a good idea at all. Why are you guys doing this first? This needs to be first compared to that. And let people vote on it. That's the other part of these platforms, is that you get the consensus of people where they can say, this is better than this. I like this idea. And then, you know what, guys, we're going to change our priorities. Everybody believes this is a much more important task than this or improvement than this. So we're going to move that over to this. We're going to move it over from a wish idea to a let's work on it now idea. That reward system that people contributed, that they came up with it, voted on it, and it changed what the company was doing, is empowering. That ability to share within the limits of your containment of saying that it has to keep to the purpose of its program. It doesn't turn into a general gossip section or talk about anything just to get it off your chest. That's not what these things are for. This is about the context of why we're doing this all together, why we get paychecks to do the work that we do, that kind of thing. And as I mentioned before, always, always recognize and give credit to the people that deserve what they've done, and to the source of what was done, and defer and take away the problems that may have come from it, as to not let them having to carry the mantle of those errors. As people progress in time, they will become knowledgeable that they created problems that were taken care of by you or other leaders and so forth. One, that comes the appreciation and respect from that, but also comes the awareness that they have to do that as well. If you've never heard the story of that there is a real Santa, where the son says he's old enough to know if Santa is real, and the dad says, "You're right, you are," and then tells them the secret of Santa. If you haven't seen that story, it's really cute. But basically, it's like, yes, and you're now Santa because now you know, and it's now your responsibility to keep the magic going. It's a great story. One that you should. I'm not going to take the story into the show today, but look it up. It's a wonderful story. So the idea is that you have to change how you're approaching, because you change how you're approaching. I don't want to say that in a small way. I see too often people just throwing more training at people as skill set training rather than changing how they train. Critical thinking. What do I mean by that? It's a buzzword. People say, oh, critical thinking, critical path, blah, blah, blah. The reality of it is critical thinking is just knowing not to accept what you're first seeing, to evaluate what you're seeing in the context of the purpose of what you're doing it for, and to constantly reevaluate your processes to know whether it's still going in the direction that you agreed to would be the goal. And the goal is clearly defined with a KPI. That is critical thinking process. Okay. That is rather than just doing it for doing its sake. There's my task. I have my onboarding checklist. We get this, we do this, we get this, we do this. I'm done. That's my job. That's what I've done. That is not the process we're talking about. We're talking about the did I miss something that we needed that might be beneficial for what this client needs, or what we're doing as a company for that hotel, or what we're doing for ourselves for this project? Is there a different way that we're doing this? Is this truly the best goal for us? Is this really what we need to be doing? Um, Thinking about how this translates to everyday life. I can tell you firsthand, it is mind-numbingly similar to see so many um, companies that get third party or they get their own services set up paid service accounts, and they do the traditional branded non-branded campaign structure. In there they have usually two ad groups. In the ad groups they have in the branded ones are kind of self-explanatory. The non-branded ones, they tend to be specialist driven and location driven. Of those, they probably have four basic text ads in each one of them. They might have an image ad in each one of them, that's about it. They turn it on and they run it until it's exhausted, and they wonder why they're not producing with it anymore. And by that time sequence is production begins to go down. They do a report at the end of the month, says that this month didn't perform well. They get asked to evaluate why it's not being done well. The next month they say that this is what we saw. Then the third month is that this is what we did to change some of these things and change some of the copy thing. So 90 days after the problem exacerbated itself, which is actually 120 days after the problem started losing money or making less money, they're actually trying to do something to fix it, which is nothing more than reconstituting it to go through the same cycle again later. I see it every day. That's not critical thinking. Critical thinking is looking at who are we selling to? Why are they buying? What is it we want to go over and sell that is related to these people? What have we built around that? What have we sent out that are variables and A/B test what does and doesn't work? And what doesn't work, is it just because it's not a good project or not a good project right now? Let's shelve it, put it into another multivariate test later on. That active, engaged process where these numbers, the deltas are going down. Productivity is still decent, but the pace of the productivity is beginning to curve behind the scenes, and we need to do something before it begins to actually negatively impact our revenue growth. We need to come up with the next thing to keep it going. That's cognitive thinking. That's the knowing that the goal is perpetuation of what we do, rather than, well, hey, you didn't ask me to do that. Now that you've asked me to do that, I got to get all this information to do this. And then we got to get back. And then the process is we do a monthly report with the clients. The clients give us feedback. And then, if they don't see it, then, it's something they're worried about. And I've heard all these excuses. Like I talk to vendors that I help with behind the scenes. And this, well, the client didn't say there was a problem. You should tell them it's a problem. You're the expert on this conversation. You tell them we have an issue and this is what we're seeing. But in order to fix this, I think we need to reevaluate what you're asking us to do, or whatever it is. Active engagement, that cognitive thinking relationship is what a lot of companies say, hey, can you teach our people to do that? No, because they got to want to do that. And the only way they want to do that is they know if they're invested in what they're doing. The only way they get invested in what they're doing is they feel that they make an impact on what they're doing, that they're a part of something. And that part of something doesn't come from emails, Slack, project management, problems, tasks, and issues, and gossip. It comes from knowing they have a voice, knowing they can influence what the company is doing, knowing what they can influence how the company is doing it. And from that process, they become invested in doing what they can, however it fits into whatever everybody's agreed to as the goal, and the KPI is defined. I think that we've hit pretty well the bigger points that I wanted to make sure was related to this. It is a very current issue. It's a very current thing. It is very much about marketing. It's very much about revenue management. It's very much about operations. It's very much about creating a culture. It's by creating a roadmap. As nascent as start. It's not the only thing. It's a starting point. It's a thing you can begin with and work with and grow from, which is the whole idea of the topic today. Big things have small beginnings. Why a roadmap can save your company's culture. So I hope you enjoyed the one-sided dialogue. By all means, I welcome and solicit all comments and responses. We get quite a few, and then I'm going to hear from my peer friends in the Hospitality Marketing Club as to how well I covered the ideas of what we were talking about. Everyone's very passionate about this discussion. Um, all had opinions about it. We even have our own roadmap when it comes to the club as to what we think we'd like it to evolve into and become and so forth. So it's a helpful tool. I hope you consider it and I hope you think of it. On our podcast today, our audio podcast, I'm going to go through some tools that I'm using when I make roadmaps for our clients, when I make roadmap platforms for ourselves, as to how these get built and what are the pros and cons of how you configure it and what you address into it and what you're using it for. So obviously, you can listen to our podcast for show 455 today. It'll also be on our podcast, our radio station. We broadcast our podcast on all the podcast platforms. We also have a radio station, hospitalityradio.com. We have our forever TV channel, hospitalitychannel.tv, which has all of our shows in replay. You can look them by topic, by presenter, or co-host, and data broadcast and so forth. And our podcast on there as well, where obviously the replays are on all of the channels that you get simulcasted on: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, X, YouTube, and of course our TV show. Even if you watch it on the Gaming Council, you'll see us on Twitch. So we're pretty much everywhere we can try to be. We hope that the content is helpful for you. Once again, if you do have feedback, you can go to HTM News /talkback, and that will you can audio express something to me. Tell me what permissions I have to refer to it. If you want to send me an email, it's lauren@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. I answer each and every email about the podcast and live show. Please let me know what your thoughts are about this conversation. Until next week's show 456, which I'll still be in the Netherlands for, you have yourself a wonderful week. If you are in the Netherlands with me right now, Happy King's Day, which will be tomorrow. I said I have a semblance to them sometimes, so we'll see how that goes. Anyways, you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so very much for the privilege of your time.